Hello everyone, this is Dr. Rachel from Precision Empowered Health, and today I have a guest speaker on my life. This is Tam John. She's a nutritional therapy practitioner and she specializes in stress recovery. And today we are also recording our first podcast, which is really exciting as well.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you, Dr. Rachel.
So something we're talking about today is actually a big passion of both of ours, which is talking about food, especially for people who love to eat. And when I started my nutritional therapy journey, I really thought that I had either had to choose good food or healthy food that really sucked. And I thought it wasn't both, right? And it was kind of a stressful thing where it's like, oh, but I want to go out to eat and I want to enjoy all these delicious things. But if I want to be healthy, I've got to just be at home eating kale.
Right.
And that's what I thought.
I remember walking in after a long day at the office with my bunch of kale that first time and thought, what do I do with this?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's wonderful how satisfying and delicious eating good food really is.
Absolutely. And there's actually a piece of my history that not a lot of patients or people know about, but years ago when I was working as a chiropractor, I actually would work at the chiropractic office in the morning and help patients, and at night I would go and apprentice at a sushi bar.
Oh,
because I wanted both things and I had no idea how to add them both into my life.
I love that.
And I just had to be around food, and at the sushi bar, it wasn't all healthy food, obviously. There's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes, like frying food, a lot of gluten, sugar, fish that wasn't wild caught. So there's a lot of things that didn't match the things that I knew about health and food, but I just had to be around the food. And so I had to split those two parts of my life with the clinical parts, the healing, and then going into the restaurant and cooking food for people at night.
It worked for you. You bridged your gap.
Yeah, finally. It took me years to figure out how to do it, but
That's
yeah,
nice.
I did.
That's really
So I kind of wanted to start today with talking about basic food. A big question I get when I work with my patients, you might see this as well in your practice, that people just don't know what to eat. And food is one of those big, I think, controversies, especially in America, because we don't have as much of a long-standing culture with food. We're not like Italians. We've lived in the same town for generations, and our family cooks like this, and we have recipes that are passed down. America is such a gathering place and a melting pot of different cultures. Some of that tradition is lost, and I think along with that, we lose our food traditions.
Very much so. I think that combined with the now several generations into a standard American diet, where even our moms and grandmas haven't handed down a lot of those traditions.
Sure.
So we have come to rely on packaged food and convenience food, even with the best intentions and things that are labeled to be healthy or paleo or gluten-free, when in reality, if we look at what's in those foods, we really kind of know better. But it's all about making the transition and baby steps toward better choices.
Very true. Hi, Amber. Amber's watching.
Hi, Amber.
So today we're doing a group discussion here about food in America, how to choose food, how to be a foodie in this culture where we have an abundance of food, an abundance of choices. Restaurants are making a killing these days in terms of, we just love going out to eat is not only a sign of, celebration, but gathering. It's like when you grow up and we become adults, instead of going to the amusement park, you just go out to eat. That's how you meet people. That's how you do business. That's how you form connections. You just go and eat.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I think because of that, and because of our melting pot of different cultures, we've lost some of what it means to really eat well, eat nutritionally. And so what I wanted to ask you is, are there things with food that every person should know about, regardless of their background, whether they're male or female, old or young, just basic food knowledge that humans have maybe lost over the again, like living in America and having this melting pot of cultures and not really having food identity anymore?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's an excellent place to guide people, is to really begin where you are. So many of our diets, I think we believe, are even clean and healthy, when in fact, if we really look at what's in that food or how it's prepared, that they really aren't so great for us. So starting where we are as individuals, to choose more colorful food, more food that's grown in nature. If you're not eating any veggies, eat a veggie every day. And then a week later add 2 and kind of, build in that way. I don't really prescribe to eating a certain number of cups of vegetables every day, but more so looking at a total plate and saying, what's in that meal. So one meal at a time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so describe to me the breakdown, like the anatomy of a plate, if you will, in terms of what you would consider to be a really healthful plate in terms of vegetables, proteins, and other macronutrients.
Right. So thank you. So I like quality protein with every meal because protein in nature comes with healthy fat. And those two combined, when we're digesting them well, are going to be giving us that long burning energy. So that's what helps you to have that great mood and that energy, and is really going to hold you over and really fuel your body. And then balancing it with as many veggies as you can. Even adding in veggies at breakfast now and then, or starting out. There are some that I think are great for breakfast, like little zucchini chips or baby spinach.
Oh yeah.
Just a little bit of that on your plate, or if you're doing smoothies, I think really energizes. And then if you're working well with whole grains, I think having those maybe a couple times a week or something in a small quantity can also be very, very helpful.
Sure.
So mostly keeping it real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. And I like how you mentioned how eating proteins and fats is that long burning energy. And I find that is one of the foundational pieces with most of my patients that come in to see me.
Yeah.
That if you can just solve the blood sugar problem, which means how well you burn the fuel that you choose to eat.
Yeah.
That piece solves a myriad of problems, very complicated problems.
It is amazing.
Yeah, that medications can't solve, that
Right.
A slew of supplements can't solve.
Yeah.
And what this is really talking about is it's, your body is a furnace. That's the analogy. And you can choose what kinds of substrates you burn in your furnace, and the things you choose have a direct outcome on how you feel, your energy levels, how you sleep, how your brain functions, your mood, whether you're nice to be around or whether you're not nice to be around, right?
It is so true. And I can speak from personal experience. Blood sugar balance was a huge issue for me for so many years, but I rationalized it was my genetics, it was the way I was wired. And when I fixed my blood sugar, the difference in how you experience hunger is just astonishing. It's really very uplifting.
Yes.
To give yourself that self-care.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Amber says this is good to learn, love to have longer lasting energy. And that is so true. And so since we are on this whole topic of blood sugar, I want to dispel a big myth that people have that eating every 2 to 3 hours is a good thing for you. You hear that all the time. And there are certain conditions that might be true in, but we're talking for just the normal human body, the healthy human body, right? Every time you eat, your body produces insulin. And insulin is a hormone that packs it on. It stores it. And so what that really translates to in a very easy to understand way is when you eat, you push insulin out and you store it, right? And the human body is really designed to have these feast and famine parts. And that famine is really important to clean house and detoxify, which we'll be talking about today. Because that detoxification is critical, and if you're just putting food in every single moment, every single day, you lose that chance to clean house. That would be like your house being overrun with kids all the time. They never leave the house, you can't clean. It doesn't happen that way.
That is a crystal clear analogy. We don't want that.
Yes, exactly. And so the myth that if you eat all the time to have that weight loss, that is not true. That means that your blood sugar is just so imbalanced and you're so addicted to usually the quick burning substrates. We're talking about things like carbohydrates, which encompasses things that we think are unhealthy, like brownies as an example, but also things like vegetables that are also very healthy for you, that you're still producing insulin and you're still not detoxifying the body. And the body goes through with this honing mechanism, and it goes in and it takes care of not only waste product, but also things like pathogens and parasites, things that don't serve your body. And that cleanup is always done during that fasting period. And so the only way to actually do that well, and there's so much conversation these days about intermittent fasting, right?
Right.
That is, you've got to eat good fuel.
Right.
You can't expect to fast, you can't expect to burn when you're on carbohydrates and you're just like fueling all the time.
Yeah, your body will start to kind of, I don't want to sound too bad, but it will start to kind of feed on itself.
Right.
And that constant release of insulin when you are eating consistently and grazing throughout the day can over time wear out your pancreas. It can no longer release insulin. And that is really the precursor to diabetes, and we know there's a connection to Alzheimer's now with diabetes and so many long-term health issues. So choices today make a huge improvement for how we feel 10 and more years from now, and we'll all get there. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And Austin says that she has an opposite experience. Yep. And so again, intermittent fasting is not right for most people all the time, people all the time, right? For those people who have blood sugar dysregulation, eating more often through the day is the first step to get to the point where your body can actually start burning fat for fuel.
Right.
Going from a standard American diet, like that SAD diet, and just jumping into intermittent fasting can be very damaging for the body, especially if you're kind of like this low blood sugar. I'm a low blood sugar person, hypoglycemic, which means that when I don't eat the right kinds of things and the proper timing, I get brain fog. I'll start to slur my words in front of patients.
Yeah.
I just lose it all, right? And so there's different steps that you need to get to the place you're at, depending on where you start. Austin says, I got it. Thanks for clearing that up. Yay, awesome. Very, very good.
That's good.
Yeah.
Breakfast is a great place to start.
So what do you do for breakfast?
Well, it depends on each day. I have found that if I make a little bit more for dinner, I might even have some dinner leftovers if it's like fish or chicken or turkey or something, and maybe even some vegetables if I'm really being good. I'm now able to eat eggs again, which is great. So that's a good breakfast food, and that can be a fast food to make ahead when you're on the run, going out the door.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Amber says, I get super shaky sometimes when I'm hungry. Is that a low blood sugar sign? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like, you've got to eat now. And when we hit those points where we just have to eat now, we tend to go for the wrong choices, which is carbohydrates, because that burns fast. Right. That's like newspaper in your oven. That's fast burning substrate.
Right.
It gives you instant satisfaction, glucose to the brain. You can think again. You feel better. But the problem with that is it spikes your blood sugar up. You feel good. And then insulin just sucks it all in. And then you're low again. And then you're hungry again.
Right.
And then you make bad food choices again, usually carbs and sugar, and up you go again. Austin says, I have to go. Ladies, I'll watch the full video tonight, and we'll see you later. And so it's that up and down swing that can eventually train your body into craving carbs, satisfying with carbs, being ill-prepared because you're like so on the go.
Right.
And when you start to go into that cycle, you have to stop it. Right? And so that first piece of stopping was Austin was talking about, of eating these smaller meals through the day, but they've got to be good choices. Because if you eat carbs, then you're just perpetuating the up and down cycle, and you're never going to get past step number one. Right.
The good choices can be your bridge to get you to the place where you can really just eat 3 times a day, and you can feel really good and happy for 4, 5. Sometimes I'll even find it's 1:30 in the afternoon. I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't had lunch. So I think, yes, my blood sugar's working.
Yes, exactly.
And then I eat.
I heard this really great story from Matt Smith, who runs nutritional therapy right now. He's he's the educational director.
Yeah.
But he's a triathlete, and he's really in shape, and he knows all these triathletes that have different diet strategies. And one of them, he's this ultra marathoner, and he's a fat burner, which means like pure keto, right? And he does these marathons where he runs like for a day. It's ridiculous.
Right. You're like,
they just keep going.
Good for you.
Yeah. And this athlete was saying, back in the day when he was on a more carb heavy diet, like carb load beforehand, which doesn't scientifically really make sense at all either.
Right.
He would have to spend days recovering after a marathon.
Yeah.
And then after he switched to protein and fat, he would recover a lot faster, like maybe in a day.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to ever go out to eat, and they were out at some convention and there was a big buffet line, it was all just kind of like salad and croutons, that kind of stuff. And that marathoner looked at the food and said, I'll eat tomorrow. And just hung out with everyone as they ate their food, because being a fat burner, he didn't have to eat.
Right.
He could actually burn and be okay until tomorrow.
Right. And I'm agreeing with that, not because I can relate to being a marathon runner, believe me, but we can apply that to our own lives on a scale that suits our own lives when we teach our bodies to do that too.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's fun, it's so rewarding.
Super fun. And so going back to the topic of food, now, there's a big food here that I talk about a lot, which is gluten. And gluten is everywhere, and when people start to go on gluten-free diets or gluten-limited diets, they're literally shocked at how many foods contain it.
Yes.
And it's like in sauces and in it's like in soy sauce, right?
And lunch meat.
Yes.
And we shouldn't be eating a lot of lunch meat, chances are.
Probably.
But if you're looking at ingredient labels, it just shows up everywhere.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, it can be in canned soups, it can be in, of course, all the packaged foods that we get. You just see wheat leading ingredient labels.
Right.
Oh, overwhelming.
Right. And so what is your take on wheat, especially with the modern wheat that we eat these days compared to older wheat back in the day?
Right. Well, I'm so glad you asked me about gluten, because it's a topic near and dear to my heart. I avoided gluten for about 8 years, and when I started doing that, I thought, this is just impossible, but I've heard this is so healthy. And I was probably celiac, but I did not get tested because at that time the test was so invasive. I thought, I'm just going to learn how to avoid it completely. And when I would get some inadvertently at a restaurant, I was really, really sick. So I just found in my research and through my training that the current modern gluten, if you will, is really damaged. It's not like the ancient gluten and grains that is properly prepared and that some people are able to eat successfully without impairment to their healthy function. But it is, most of the wheat in America, North America, is sprayed with glyphosate, which is basically Roundup. And this is showing up in, I've heard statistics of even people who have been eating organic. It's showing up in urine samples, and it is very, very damaging. So beyond the chemical sprays, it is also refined and processed to the point that the nutrients and the vitamins are just completely depleted. So basically your body doesn't know what to do with it, and it creates a lot of havoc internally. And so to avoid it, really leaning to all of these foods that nature provides us and learning to get off of the labels and the packaged products. And it is a one step at a time process. And some people, and I'll use myself as an example, I was able to, over time, reintroduce gluten. I'm not eating a standard American diet in those packaged products, but when it's organic, assuring that it hasn't been sprayed and it's sprouted, putting some wheat berries on a salad, soaking those for days and going through the whole process. So it really can be very, very nourishing. But long answer to your question about what I think about gluten, but you asked me.
Oh, Shelly's tuned in. Hello, Shelly.
Hey.
So with gluten, man, I first heard about this back when I was in school, in Cairo school, and I really fought the idea hard because I was addicted to gluten. And that's one thing about the food that is so interesting, because when you actually get gluten in the body, there's many barriers to success, right? And when we think about food, we want less barriers. We want quicker absorption, we want quick assimilation, and we don't want damage to the body. Those are some just critical pieces to food.
Your body just is amazingly capable of being this self-correcting entity, but when we constantly give it the wrong inputs, it is very damaging.
Right, exactly. And so gluten, first of all, is a very, very long chain protein. And we all know that proteins have to be broken down. That is one of the make or breaks in terms of having good immunity in the body and to not destroy the body while we eat. Because eating is hands down one of the most stressful things we do on a day-to-day basis. You're taking foreign entities, putting it in your mouth and expecting magic to happen. It is a stressful event. And so when you choose foods like gluten, first of all, it's a long chain protein, which means that your protein digestion has to be top notch, really, really good. So we're talking about upper stomach digestion using HCl stomach acid to break that protein down. And that for a lot of people is really challenging, just that first step.
Yeah.
Right? So let's say you did a really good job breaking that down and it goes down into the intestinal area. Now that gluten gets spliced into what we call gluteomorphines, which are like opiate-like structures that can actually cross a blood-brain barrier and dock on opiate receptors and produce an opiate response. And if anyone knows about opiates, they make you feel really good.
You used the word addiction earlier, and that is spot on.
Yes. And that addiction level could literally, when you take people off of gluten, it could be like a drug rehab situation where they're just so addicted to it, and it feels so awful to not have it. And it's no wonder that so many of our comfort foods have gluten in it. And cheese, which is caseomorphine. So similar things, addiction on addiction, on this creamy mess. It's amazing.
Oh, now who would want to eat that?
Right. No. And Amber says it's a challenge because it's in so many things. Exactly. Yeah, definitely. And so when food becomes an addiction, which for a lot of people it is, right? So if you just think of, what if I stopped eating bread for a month? If that makes you sweaty, then you have an addiction to the gluten, right? Or if you thought of no more mac and cheese and that makes you really angry, then that's an addiction. It's a neurological and emotional connection to your food. And then we want to look at gluten as a whole, so it's a grain, and grains are categorically very, very tough to digest, even tougher than things like animal protein. People don't realize that. Right. And there's so many pieces and components to grains like lectins and phytates that our bodies don't do well with that prohibit digestion. And so I think one big thing that people need to know is that when you get food and you get that label that tells you how much good stuff is in food, just because it's on a label doesn't mean that's what you're getting. It's not a one-for-one. There's still absorption of that, which is always a little bit less than what's on a label because your body has to do the work. So your body has to be strong, and our food choices have to be good and congruent over time to yield the ability to pull that nutrition from the food.
And when you start this journey, this can seem very, very overwhelming about how you deal with all of this, and it's so concerning to step away from the habits that you have because of the properties in food Dr. Rachel's describing, but staying the course and doing the one step at a time and being consistent and being thorough, it gets so much better and better because you feel better, you have a freedom physically and mentally from those properties that have bound you, and you're energized. It's the basis of how we're made, to be energized from our food.
Exactly. And talking about things like resetting the body, and we've talked about detoxification a couple times already today. I just wanted to delve a little bit further into that because detox seems kind of like a fad, kitschy thing to do. When people go to detoxes, we think of either like drug detox, something really extreme like that. We think of these awful cayenne pepper lemon juice detoxes where you're starving yourself for a week. And that's not detox because detox requires protein.
That's deprivation is what that is.
Exactly. Right. And so there's a fine line between cleaning the body, but you can't clean your house with no paper towels and no spray bottles and no trash bags. You just can't do the work. So you have to put the proper kind of substrates in to clean and detoxify the body. And so I know you're running a 3-week detox coming in January. So tell us a little bit more about how that works.
Thank you. My Lighten Up Cleanse is really a reboot for the mindset and a habit transformation shift. So it's a 3-week teleclass. We meet on Saturdays, Saturday morning on the call, and if people aren't available at the call time, it's available for a replay throughout the week. And then I'm giving materials, so a lot of supportive materials to help people, because most of us really know intuitively the changes that we need to make, a starting point, and something that really resonates with us. So the idea is when we learn some tools about rebooting and really shifting our habits, we can get our mindset wrapped around our commitment to do those things. And then science is saying that it really takes 2 to 3 months for habits to really take a firm hold, although a lot of the more popular articles and things talk about that 3-week time frame. So it's 21 days, so if you're doing something consistently for that time period, you've really got a lot of momentum behind you so that you can do it. So for some people, the result might be losing weight, it might be getting off of sugar, and it might be something more so about making that healthy breakfast every day, and that's what you're doing. But when you do that over and over again, you're making that a habit, so it becomes a lifestyle, and it's never about a diet. The first 3 letters of the diet is die.
That's true.
And I have a 0 deprivation promise, and I stand by that.
I like that so much. And I think that's so true, because how our culture is set up right now is we like instant gratification, especially when it comes to what we perceive as scarcity and deprivation. Hi, Samantha. And so with scarcity and deprivation, how it goes is we think we can't have the thing that's going to make us happy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then therefore we're sad. And then for that payoff, we want everything to change in your favor right away. So as an example, someone might say, okay, I've heard a lot about this gluten thing. I don't know if it's my thing or not, but I'll try to not eat it for like a week or 2. And then it doesn't, and then nothing happens.
Right.
And the problem with that is that unless gluten is your primary issue, and for most people these days, especially people who have gut issues and blood sugar issues, it's not just one thing anymore.
Right. And it's really getting off of whatever it is that's ailing you, like gluten, properly, because if you choose to replace with gluten-free products, you can be giving yourself worse input. And the only reason I laugh is because I can empathize. It's all human nature, and we're just all in it together.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so, really doing things in terms of how much momentum are you pouring into your life? And this is kind of a key piece I've really started to talk about with my patients, because at my office we do really specific clinical work. So if we think we have a gluten problem and you're not willing to just go off of it and for the duration of your protocol and just really see how the body operates, then we'll do a test.
Right.
That's it. We can get specific data. And with that kind of gluten test, you will know, number one, do you have a problem with wheat as a plant itself? Yes or no? And then you will know whether you have problems with sprouted wheat, yes or no. Sprouted grains are always thought of as more healthful, right? But some people do worse when it's sprouted. It's a bio-individual thing, and you wouldn't really know unless you either tested it or every time you ate it, you had a bad response, which, let's be honest, that's not how it goes. Right? And if we don't have a bad response every time we do something, then we never learn from it. It'd be like punishing your dog for peeing on the carpet a week ago. The dog will be like, I don't know why you're doing this to me, right? And a lot of us have those delayed food reactions where a week later, a month later for gluten, up to 6 months later in terms of a hormonal endocrine response, where the body's like, I didn't like that, and you have no idea what it came from.
Right. And personally, I found I was a little reluctant thinking that gluten could even be a problem. How could it be a problem? I love it so much, right?
Exactly.
But when I got off of it and then I had some, and I've seen this with other foods too, with clients with eggs and things, then when you have some, then you feel really, really poorly.
Right. Exactly.
So your body has just said enough.
And I think that's one of the goals from doing something like a detox, because you're kind of wiping the plate from all these things that you just may not have clarity on. Some things are really sneaky, like gluten has a direct link on autoimmunity of things like your thyroid. But it's not one for one, and the people who get those gut cramps and those gut problems, they're the lucky ones, because you get instant feedback. It's like, don't do that. That was really bad. Right. And then every time you do it, don't do that. That was really bad. You can actually learn from that. But if you have like a hormonal or an autoimmune problem with a food, you're not going to eat the food and go like, oh, my thyroid hurts. Like, that's not how it goes.
Right.
It's a lead up that takes a decade, sometimes even more, to develop.
Right.
And those things you don't have any preamble with, you don't have pain associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of the detox is you can actually get a lot of free data, right? You wipe out the things that are commonly issues for people, and you spend a protracted amount of time doing the right kinds of things and really getting the house clean. And then after that, when you bring it back, then you can be like, oh, that's not so great, right? And you can actually learn from that,
Right.
without necessarily having to do lots of tests, unless you're at that critical point and there's no room for error and you have to test.
Yeah, I think so too. And your body is amazingly self-correcting. Whatever you're experiencing and how it's being impacted, when you're making those better choices for yourself personally, your body will do amazing things internally to support you.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Samantha says, I forget the pain that certain foods cause me. And you know, we humans do have this amazing propensity to forget pain. Like we in the moment it sucks. If we remembered pain the way it was, women would only have one child. They would never go for the second one, right? And it's that you forget about those pieces that you can go back and actually engage in those things again, which is, I think, a good thing. Otherwise, we'd be paralyzed in life and we'd be afraid to do anything and eat anything.
It is a good thing.
Yeah. So, and Samantha says, detox time to clean house. Absolutely. So something I am actually doing this weekend is I'm running my first 1 week group detox.
Yay.
And the reason I'm doing it is because I'm doing it for myself. And at this point, if it doesn't apply to me, it doesn't really apply to anyone else, because really my qualifications come into my ability to get over my pain points, right? And my issues. And so a big hang up that I've always had is it's all or nothing. And so unless I'm willing to set aside 3 weeks to do a whole detox,
Right.
and do it like whole hog, which I did this June and I felt so good, unless I'm willing to devote that time again, which does take effort and time, and it can be a little bit of a mind warp as well in terms of what you're willing to do for yourself,
Yes.
right? So it's not just eating certain things or avoiding certain things, it's saying yes to up-leveling your life. It's a psychological step up.
Yes.
And unless I'm willing to do all or nothing, I don't do it at all, because it's a nothing piece, right?
And sounds like you.
Definitely wouldn't do it during the holidays because it just messes everything up. And I really, tell patients, eat Thanksgiving, eat Christmas in a congruent way where you're still celebrating, but you don't have guilt going into it, guilt during it, and pain afterwards, right? So how do you do it in a congruent way? And I have never, ever, ever once done a detox for myself during this like November, December junction, because all or nothing, it was just nothing, right? And so I am doing a 1 week detox because that shatters my belief that has to be the whole thing.
Yeah.
It shatters my belief that it has to be 3 weeks, although 3 weeks is really, really great. But what can you do even just in this moment today to meet congruency? And a lot of us believe that unless we're willing to do the whole thing and devote all the time and all the money, that it doesn't count. And that's not true. It counts. Every moment counts. Every day counts. And so I'm doing this detox, and now there's all these people that have joined on with me as well, to shatter this belief that you got to wait until January 1st.
There's no turning back now.
There's no turning back. I have to do it. And so it's going to be a big learning point for me as well.
That sounds like
I'll
fun.
let you know how it goes.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
And Amber says eggs make me so sore and achy, but I'll eat cake sometimes. So yeah, you probably have some kind of a sensitivity towards eggs, Miss Amber. I had one too. I couldn't eat eggs for like a year.
I did.
I was so sad.
I was off of the eggs too, and that's a shocker.
Yeah.
When you
really,
find
really
out
sad.
everything that the eggs are in.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
That's when I learned to make more for dinner and have leftovers for breakfast.
And Samantha
That's a good
says
thing.
that she wants to make Amber an eggless cake. Yes. It can make all of us an eggless cake, Samantha.
And gluten-free.
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, we've kind of covered some basic human food topics today. We talked about gluten, the ever sneaky gluten. We talked about detoxification and how really important it is to set aside time to clean house. And I think we'll leave with this. All cultures used to have detoxification rituals. It was just part of being human. And it was part of taking time aside to really cleanse the body.
Right.
And those things were set in stone. Like you couldn't just push by them because you were too busy. That was just part of what you did.
Yeah.
And now, not only have we lost those traditions, right? We also encounter way more toxicity now than we ever have in our water, in our food, in our cosmetic products, chemicals that we haven't tested for long-term safety and usage. We drive on the highway, we're getting pollution. It's everywhere. And so we've lost this tradition that was wonderful for us, and we've increased the amount of insult and stress and toxicity. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's really good to free yourself up and give your liver, your major detoxifying organ, an opportunity to really support you so you can rejuvenate and repair and have perpetual rejuvenation. I love that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's how we're designed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Samantha says, I had issues with eggs a bit before. After months of enjoying 6 eggs each morning, now she tries to limit. Yeah.
6 eggs every morning.
Super paleo. Get it, girl.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. Again, I'm here with Tam John. She's a nutritional therapy practitioner, and she specializes in stress reduction. She's also written a book, which I want you to talk about.
Thank you. I'll show my pretty cover here, A Fresh Wellness Mindset. Yes, and my book is really about learning to love food that loves you back. So it gives you a lot of these practical steps along the way. It gives you background as to why we are in the situation we are with our food supply and gluten and so many other offending foods. And then it really guides you to support what Dr. Rachel was talking about, which is blood sugar regulation. I consider that to be the crux of health, along with digestion that we've been talking about too. So it has 19 all-American gluten-free recipes that are really delicious.
Nice.
And a lot of tips and guides and things along the way. So you can get the book at Amazon, or it's at Tattered Cover here in Denver. If you're in Santa Fe or down that way, it's at Garcia Street Books. Or you can contact me, Tam John.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, thanks to everyone for tuning in. Again, I'm Dr. Rachel from Precision Empowered Health. This is like the first of, I think, a lot of podcasts that we're going to do. So this is going to be really exciting.
I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Dr. Rachel.
All right, everyone. Bye.